boosters.
GLS is go for ALS.
And we are go for ALS. The Space Launch System is now counting down to liftoff of Orion on its maiden voyage to the moon. Launch team can no longer recycle the count. Silencer pressure water now
15.
Flowing under the ML. And here we go.
10.
Hydrogen burn-off igniters initiate. 7, 6, 5. 4-stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. Boosters in ignition. And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
All 4 RS-25 engines on the core stage and 2 solid rocket boosters now propelling the vehicle at 128 miles per hour. Hearing good control on the roll. Teams in Mission Control Houston, all good calls so far. Now 30 seconds into the flight of Artemis 1. First milestone will be for the vehicle to pass through max Q at about 1 minute and 9 seconds into launch. This is the greatest period of atmospheric force on the rocket. SLS now traveling 607 miles per hour. You're looking at 8.8 billion pounds of maximum thrust. Quiet here in the loops in Mission Control. 4 core stage engines throttling down ahead of passing through max Q. Milestone will be for the solid rocket boosters engines about 2 minutes and 11 seconds into the flight, so about 30 seconds from now. Again, quiet here in Mission Control Houston as teams continue monitoring the flight of Artemis 1. We're now 16 miles downrange from the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center, traveling over 2,800 miles per hour. Standing by for solid rocket booster jettison and shortly thereafter. Confirmation that the solid rocket boosters have separated. These 177-foot boosters. Now the core stage continues to power the flight of Orion, all 4 RS-25 engines firing, traveling over 3,400 miles per hour, 46 miles downrange. 2 minutes and 36 seconds into the flight. Hearing nominal calls here in Mission Control Houston. We've still got 4 good engines on the core stage. Next up, we'll be looking for the service module fairing to separate. This is 3 15 by 15 foot fairing panels, providing structural support, protecting the service module. Those will separate at about 3 minutes and 11 seconds into flight, and very shortly thereafter will be followed by the launch abort system separation. Just over 3 minutes into the flight of Artemis 1, now traveling over 4,060 miles per hour, 83 miles downrange. We just had confirmation that the service module fairing has separated. And that the launch abort system pyros have fired, separating those from Orion as well. For future crew members,
সো সফলভাবে কিন্তু আর্টেমিস 1 লঞ্চ হয়ে গেছে। আমরা একটা ব্রেক নিয়েছিলাম মাঝখানে। আমরা ভাবিনি যে এই ব্রেকের মাঝখানেই লঞ্চটি এই ব্রেকের মাঝখানে হয়ে যাবে। সো এটা অনেক প্রাউড একটা মোমেন্ট, অ্যান্ড আমরা অত্যন্ত দুঃখিত যে এই সামান্য একটা ব্রেকের মধ্যে লঞ্চটি হয়ে গেল। আমরা সম্পূর্ণ লঞ্চটির ফার্স্ট ফুটেজটি কভারেজ করতে পারলাম না, অ্যান্ড আমাদের ফুটেজটি একটু ডিলেড, মানে লঞ্চটি বেশ কিছুক্ষণ আগে হয়েছে, কয়েক মিনিট আগে। তো আমরা কিছুক্ষণ পরে যেহেতু হোল্ড করছি, তো সেই হিসেবে আমরা একটু পিছিয়ে। তো আশা করছি যে এমন ঐতিহাসিক একটি মুভমেন্টকে সবাই শেয়ার করে ছড়িয়ে দেবে, কারণ এমন মুভমেন্ট কিন্তু আমরা প্রতিদিন দেখতে পাই না। যারা আসলে মহাকাশ বিষয় বিজ্ঞান এসব নিয়ে আগ্রহী, তাদের কাছে দিনটি আসলে অনেক গুরুত্বপূর্ণ। আজ 16ই নভেম্বর 2022, এই দিনটি ইতিহাসের পাতায় লেখা থাকবে। আমরা পুনরায় বেশ 50 বছরের দীর্ঘ সময় পর আমরা পুনরায় চাঁদে ফেরার জন্য একটি পদক্ষেপ নিয়েছি। তো আশা করছি সবাই ভালো থাকবেন, সুস্থ থাকবেন এবং এনজয় দ্য লাইফ।
Traveling 8,800 miles per hour, 345 miles downrange from the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center. Again, we are anticipating core stage main engine cutoff at about 8 minutes and 3 seconds. And about 10 seconds later, we'll see core stage separation, at which point Orion and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage will be flying free. Now traveling over 10,000 miles per hour, 6 minutes and 15 seconds into the flight of Artemis 1, 427 miles downrange. Quiet here on the loops in Mission Control Houston. Teams continue to monitor this first flight. About a minute and a half now until that core stage main engine cutoff time. Our 4 core stage engines continue to fire at maximum thrust. Coming up on 7 minutes since launch today, now traveling over 12,800 miles per hour, 563 miles downrange. Again, still quiet here in Mission Control Houston. As we prepare for main engine cutoff, the 4 RS-25 engines are beginning to throttle down. Seconds now until core stage main engine cutoff. All 4 engines continue to throttle down. Now 7 minutes 45 seconds into the flight, traveling over 16,000 miles per hour. Continuing to hear good calls here in Mission Control Houston. We're standing by for core stage main engine cutoff. And we have confirmation of core stage main engine cutoff. Orion is now in Earth's orbit. The flight dynamics officer reports that we have a nominal main engine cutoff. And we just heard the call for core stage separation. That means Orion and the interim cryogenic propulsion stage are now flying free from the core stage of the Space Launch System. The next milestone will be solar array deploy approximately 18 minutes after liftoff. But before Orion stretches its wings, let's check back in with our friends at Kennedy Space Center and hear all about what it was like to hear the rocket roar off the launch pad. Megan and Kayla, I've got to hear all about it.
Well, if you're just joining us, welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space.
সো এই মুহূর্তে ভিন্ন হয়ে গেছে রকেটের যে সেকেন্ড স্টেজটি রয়েছে। সেকেন্ড স্টেজটি এখন ফার্স্ট স্টেজ থেকে সম্পূর্ণ ভিন্ন হয়ে গেছে বর্তমানের এই মুহূর্তে। তো এখন অরিয়ন ক্যাপসুলটি পৃথিবীর কক্ষপথে অবস্থান করছে বর্তমানে এই মুহূর্তে। অ্যান্ড যেমন স্ক্রিনে দেখতে পাচ্ছ তোমরা, এটি এখন পৃথিবীর চারপাশে প্রদক্ষিণ করবে এবং কিছু প্রদক্ষিণ সম্পূর্ণ করার পরে এটি পুনরায় থ্রাস্ট অন করবে অ্যান্ড পৃথিবী কক্ষপথ থেকে পার করে সেটি চাঁদের দিকে এগিয়ে যাবে, অর্থাৎ এটাকে এসকেপ ভেলোসিটি করবে। কারণ বর্তমানে এটি পৃথিবী কক্ষপথে পৃথিবীর আকর্ষণের কারণে পৃথিবী কক্ষপথে অবস্থান করছে, কিন্তু পরবর্তী সময়ে এটি পৃথিবীর কক্ষপথকে থেকে বের হওয়ার জন্য পুনরায় থ্রাস্ট অন করবে এবং পৃথিবীর যে স্কেপ ভেলোসিটি সেটা যদিও সে পার করে ফেলেছে আর পৃথিবীর কক্ষপথ অবস্থান করছে, কিন্তু এটা পৃথিবীর আবর্তনকালের মধ্যে রয়েছে। পৃথিবীর আবর্তনকাল থেকে বের হওয়ার জন্য এটা পুনরায় এই থ্রাস্টারটাকে অন করবে অ্যান্ড অরবিট চেঞ্জ করার জন্য পৃথিবীর কক্ষপথ থেকে বের হয়ে চাঁদের কক্ষপথে প্রবেশ করবে। অ্যান্ড এই মিশনটি জটিল এবং অনেক রোমাঞ্চকর একটি মিশন হতে চলছে।
The ground shook. We could hear the thrust pushing that rocket into space. 8.8 million pounds of thrust.
Yes.
It's incredible. It was
Yeah.
amazing to see here live in person.
How does it compare? So this is your first launch on the ground. How does it compare to your launch when you're in the capsule soaring towards space?
I mean, equally emotional, I think.
Yeah.
We train for everything, and so when we're in that capsule waiting for launch, we're just running our procedures. You could almost, trick us and say that we were in the simulator and it wasn't real, but like in that moment of liftoff, when the thrust builds underneath you, like we saw it today, it's just hard not to be overwhelmed by the emotional experience, the excitement, the joy of that moment. It's incredible.
Yeah, I think we can't say it enough. This team really deserved this moment. They've been working so hard for this moment. When I heard that we got into terminal count, it was, I felt a sense of relief and excitement for them that I think everybody here did. We really wanted them to succeed. We really wanted to see the launch today. And wow, I will never forget this.
Me neither. It was an incredible experience to be here and see that happen.
Yeah. Was there anything that was particularly surprising to you? Again, this is your first launch. What were you expecting?
I think we also had a nighttime launch for our launch, and so I think one thing you underestimate is how much it lights up the night sky.
Yes.
We were able to watch it all the way through that trajectory. We were able to see the boosters separate and everything, so it was just an incredible view. It's amazing how much you get to see of the flight path when it's at night and it's lighting up the sky.
Yeah, and I don't know if you noticed this, but we see the moon here, and the trajectory of the rocket looked like it was flying towards it. You know what I mean? I was like, oh my God, that's so poetic. It's so beautiful. I'm so glad we launched today.
Yeah.
Wow.
Congratulations to the team. It's incredible.
We're going to head over to Daryl, who was at the launch team. Daryl, you got to count us down through that, through liftoff. I mean, how was that being in the launch control center with them?
Well, Megan, it was something else. I got to tell you, you're looking live inside the firing room where Charlie Blackwell Thompson is about to address her team after a whole lot of hard work and preparation to get to this moment. Let's stand by and listen to her now.
Check. You can't hear it in the room. Can you guys hear me? No. Press side can hear me, but the room can't. You can hear me? Because the guys. I don't know what he's telling me to do.
Sound suppressor water now flowing
15.
under the ML. And here we go.
10.
Hydrogen burn-off igniters initiated. 7, 6, 5. 4-stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. Boosters in ignition. And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
All 4 RS-25 engines on the core stage and 2 solid rocket boosters now propelling the vehicle at 128 miles per hour. Hearing Good control on the roll from teams in Mission Control Houston. All good calls so far. Now 30 seconds into the flight of Artemis 1. First milestone will be boarding vehicle to pass through max Q at about 1 minute and 9 seconds into launch. This is the greatest period of atmospheric force on the rocket. Flight of Artemis 1, spacecraft now traveling at 16,500 miles per hour around the Earth. We are in solar array deploy, and we have confirmation all 4 arrays are deployed. Coming up in a little less than 30 minutes is the perigee raise maneuver. And with our
Launch team can no longer cycle the count.
We caught a glimpse there of those solar arrays, and with all 4 solar arrays properly deployed, Orion's journey to the moon continues, and we've got more operational updates coming up shortly, but for now, I'm going to toss it back to Megan and Kayla at Kennedy.
Leah, thank you so much. Our return to the moon will be different than the last time. We plan to explore more of the lunar surface and learn how to live and work there. With more on our destination, let's bring back NASA's Dan Hewitt with our new moon board.
Hey, thanks, Megan. I gotta be honest, we ran outside to catch it. I'm still shaking a little bit. That never gets old. That is always one of the coolest things you'll ever see in your entire life. And that rocket was massive and loud and just so cool. All right, the moon. This is why we call it the moon board, but the moon, you know, since the dawn of time, humans have looked at the sky and shouted at our neighbor, I'm gonna walk in your face. And in the 60s, we actually did it. 6 times, starting with Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Apollo 11, 1969, followed by 5 more successive landings, each time delivering 2 human beings to the surface of the moon. Our last one was Apollo 17, and that was in 1972, Gene Cernan and Harrison Smith stepping off for the last time. Now, we have not sent humans back since then, but they accomplished a lot under Apollo. Lots of technological advancements, deployed science instruments, brought back hundreds of pounds of lunar rocks and regolith, teaching us about the moon and also about our place in the solar system. The moon is fascinating because it doesn't have a lot of the geological processes we have here on Earth. You don't have erosion, you don't have wind and water wearing down rocks, you don't have plate tectonics that are constantly recycling the crust, and so everything out there is really old. In fact, one of the rocks brought back on Apollo 15, called the Genesis rock, was dated to be 4 billion years old, so from the primordial beginnings of our solar system. But as Kayla said a little bit earlier, those missions were measured in days, their spacewalks in just hours. With Artemis, we're looking to go and we're looking to stay. And we're not looking around the equator like under Apollo, we're looking at the lunar South Pole. Now, why? So we haven't sent people since the 70s to the moon, but we haven't stopped studying it. We've had orbiters like the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, which has literally just been flying loops around the moon, taking high-resolution images of the surface, so high resolution that you can look them up. They have images of all the different Apollo landing sites, and you can actually see the footprints, the paths they left in the lunar regolith of those sites. We had a mission called L-Cross, which slammed a probe into a crater on the moon, sending out material, some of which potentially hadn't seen direct sunlight for billions of years, and then analyzing what shot out. And through missions like that and others, we've been able to find that there is water ice trapped in those permanently shadowed areas on the moon. A lot of them center around that South Pole. We have already identified 13 potential landing sites for the Artemis 3 mission. And these are where we're going to send our astronauts around the lunar South Pole to access that water ice. Now, why water? Why are we caring about water? Well, it serves a lot of purposes. Obviously, for humans, you need that to breathe. You can split water apart, get oxygen for breathing gas for an atmosphere. If you have a lunar base, you can split it into oxygen and hydrogen. That's rocket fuel. We just launched the most powerful rocket in history using those constituent parts. And so you can start to live off the land. We can use that, something called in situ resource utilization. And really, the whole point of that is to use the moon as this proving ground. We're trying to get to Mars. We're trying to learn to live on other planets where there is gravity, where we're going to have to use resources there on the ground because we won't be able to bring everything with us. And by going to the lunar South Pole, by going to stay under Artemis, we're going to be able to start practicing that. We're going to perfect those systems, perfect those techniques and operations we need to do that so we can use the moon as that jumping off point to Mars and beyond. So that's why the moon. We're going to see Orion fly around it for the very first time in just a couple of days. That launch was spectacular. I'm still way too excited, but can't wait to see some shots of the moon from up close from Orion. So I'll send it back over to you, Megan.
Thanks so much, Dan. So right now we're actually joined by members of the Red Crew. You'll remember from watching the launch coverage that the Red Crew was sent out by the launch team when the launch team identified a small leak on a hydrogen valve inside of the mobile launcher. Well, now here they are. This is Trent Annis. Trent, can you just introduce everybody else here on your team?
Yeah, so this is Chad. He's our safety guy.
While cryo is loading, talk to us about getting that call, being told, hey, you guys need to go in there. And it was the first time for all three of you.
Yeah, all I could say is we were very excited. I was ready to get up there and go.
Really? How are you guys
মিশন
feeling?
আর্টেমিস
Very
যেটা হতে চলেছে চাঁদের উদ্দেশ্যে 8 লক্ষ কিলোমিটার পাড়ি দেওয়ার এক রোমাঞ্চকর যাত্রা, যার সবটা শুরু হবে এই লঞ্চ কমপ্লেক্স 39-এ। তবে এই যাত্রার প্রথম মিশনে থাকছে না কোনো নভোচারী। ভবিষ্যতের মানববাহী মিশনের যাত্রাপথ ও প্রতিটি সিস্টেম প্রস্তুত করার লক্ষ্যেই গভীর মহাকাশে পাঠানো হচ্ছে এই যানকে।
প্রথম 2.5 মিনিটে আর্টমিস পৃথিবীপৃষ্ঠকে ছেড়ে যাওয়ার জন্য গতিবেগ জোর করতে থাকবে। এর পরবর্তী 6 মিনিটে এটি কক্ষপথে পৌঁছানোর জন্য আরো গতিবেগ বৃদ্ধি করতে শুরু করবে। এরপর ওরিয়নকে আরো বেগবান করার জন্য সেকেন্ড স্টেজ থেকে একটা পুশ করা হবে।
এবং যখন সকল সিস্টেম সমূহ এর যাবতীয় কাজ শেষ করবে, রকেটের দ্বিতীয় স্টেজ গর্জে উঠবে আর ওরিয়নকে নিয়ে যাবে এই পৃথিবীর বাইরে এক অজানা প্রান্তরে। এবং এই মুহূর্তে আমরা এগোবো চাঁদের উদ্দেশ্যে। গন্তব্যে পৌঁছতে আমাদের বেশ কিছুদিন সময় লাগবে এবং এই চিরশূন্যতায় ভ্রমণকালে আমরা শুরু করব বিভিন্ন পরীক্ষা নিরীক্ষা।
3,86,242 কিলোমিটার পরে ওরিয়ন চাঁদের চারপাশে একটা ডিম্বাকৃতি কক্ষপথে প্রবেশ করবে, যা চন্দ্রপৃষ্ঠের প্রায় 96 কিলোমিটার উপরে ওরিয়নকে নিয়ে যাবে এবং তারপরেই চাঁদের কক্ষপথে এটি চাঁদ হতে 64,000 কিলোমিটার দূর পর্যন্ত যাবে। আর এই প্রথম কোনো মানব বহন সক্ষম মহাকাশযান মহাকাশে পৃথিবী হতে এত দূরে ভ্রমণ করবে, যা আগে কখনোই হয়নি। চাঁদে পৌঁছানো আমাদের জন্য যতটা গুরুত্বপূর্ণ হবে, পৃথিবীতে ফিরে আসা ঠিক ততটাই গুরুত্বপূর্ণ এবং চ্যালেঞ্জিং। আমরা যতই এই মহাকাশ যাত্রায় বের হই আর যতই নতুন নতুন অভিযান পরিচালনা করি, ততই ভবিষ্যতের জন্য দুয়ার খুলে যায় আরো নতুন সম্ভাবনা।
এটি একটি মহাকাশযান যেটা তৈরি করা হয়েছে মহাকাশের কঠিনতম অবস্থায় মহাকাশচারীদের সুরক্ষিত রেখে পৃথিবীতে ফিরিয়ে আনার জন্য। পৃথিবীর নিকটে আসতেই ওরিয়ন ইউরোপিয়ান সার্ভিস মডিউলের পাওয়ার সাপ্লাই এবং প্রোপালশন সিস্টেম থেকে বিচ্ছিন্ন হয়ে শেষ মুহূর্তের কার্যাবলী শুরু করবে। ঘন্টায় 39,428 কিলোমিটার বেগে পৃথিবীর বায়ুমণ্ডলে প্রবেশের সময় ক্যাপসুলের হিট শিল্ড রি এন্ট্রি শক্তি অনুভব করতে শুরু করবে। ওরিয়নের চারপাশের বাতাস সূর্যের তাপমাত্রার অর্ধেক তাপমাত্রায় পৌঁছাবে এবং বাতাসের প্রবল এই ঘর্ষণ ওরিয়নের বেগ কমিয়ে আনবে, যতক্ষণ পর্যন্ত না প্যারাসুট ডিপ্লয়েড মাধ্যম এটি ক্যাপসুলটিকে যথেষ্ট স্থিতিশীলভাবে প্রশান্ত মহাসাগরের বুকে স্প্ল্যাশ ডাউন করাবে।
প্রথমে চাঁদে এবং এরপর নিরাপদে আবার পৃথিবীতে। এই যাত্রায় আর্টমিস 1 স্থাপন করবে এক নতুন মাইলফলক। বিশ্বজুড়ে অংশীদারদের সাথে এক হয়ে এটাই আমাদের বেছে নেওয়া চ্যালেঞ্জ, যেন আমরা হাতে হাত রেখে আলোকিত করতে পারি পৃথিবী থেকে চাঁদ, মঙ্গল এবং সদূর মহাকাশ ভ্রমণের পথ। আমরা প্রস্তুত।
Let's meet them.
The imagery that we're collecting on Artemis 1 and the mission itself is preparing to carry humans to the moon. The Orion Imager team is going to be monitoring every aspect of visual spacecraft performance for the entire duration of the mission. The first time that we're going to be live streaming digital video from its spacecraft back down to the Earth from the vicinity of the moon. That's never been done before. What we'll be transmitting live streaming will be lower resolution, more compressed, because we have to fit it into a thinner pipe, if you will. Every one of these cameras is in its position where it is and it's configured the way it is for a very specific reason. We're going to be monitoring anything that we can see with the cameras for spacecraft performance. The imagery teams at NASA are composed of dozens and dozens of very highly trained, very specialized people, engineers, technicians, analysts. If we can see it, we're going to try and keep an eye on it. Imagery has been invaluable throughout the history of NASA. We flew cameras on Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, all of that stuff that we saw while the astronauts were on the moon. It helps us detect the unknown unknowns. It allows us to see things that we didn't anticipate happening before. So when we do fly people on Artemis 2, we can have a high confidence that everything is working the way it should.
I love getting a look at those teams that we don't normally see, like the red team that Megan and Kayla just got to interview. A really big thanks to them and everyone that made this liftoff happen tonight. So we are going to toss it back to Megan and Kayla now at KSC. Again, we're about 15 minutes away from perigee raise maneuver.
Thank you, Leah. Yeah, we wanted to take us back into Orion and talk about some of the science that's being enabled by Artemis 1 today. So inside of Orion are 10 of these. So they're called CubeSats because they're tiny satellites. Essentially, they're the size of the shoebox when they're folded down, but then once they're deployed, they're opened up. They have solar arrays, things like that. That's when it gets a lot bigger. Now, these are called secondary payloads for this mission. Kayla, can you talk to us about what secondary payloads are?
Yeah, it just really means that it's not a primary objective of the mission. We're not relying on the success of these CubeSats for overall mission success. It's kind of a bonus payload, right? A chance to deploy these satellites that have different sensors on them and collect some awesome data to support other research objectives.
Yeah, and I know battery life was a concern for some of them, but all 10 were deployed, and scientists, I'm sure, are eager to see what kind of information that hopefully they'll be able to get. And they're just some of several research projects on this flight that will help gather data about the moon and more.
Artemis 1 is paving the way for us to explore deeper and deeper into space.
I think Artemis 1 is significant on so many levels. It is a new frontier to do science.
So the primary objective is to test the Orion spacecraft integrated with the Space Launch System.
And it is designed to carry out the boldest of the bold missions.
But it's more than just learning how to travel in space. We're taking a lot of cool science along with us on this first mission to the moon.
So as NASA plans to go back to the surface of the moon and then onto Mars,
we want to spend more time there, and that's riskier business. So the more we learn about the moon itself and the environment where we'll be operating, the better we can prepare. We have 10 CubeSats we call secondary payloads, which are small scientific spacecraft of their own that will each be conducting their own scientific mission.
All of these payloads in some form or fashion will help us going forward. They are going to be studying the moon.
And they're going to help us understand what is the moon made out of, what types of rocks, what types of regolith, what types of ice, what's mixed in with water that might be present.
One of them actually is going to attempt to land on the moon. They're going to be studying the sun.
Understanding and studying the space environment or the space weather.
Some different propulsion systems. These novel ideas will ultimately turn into the technology and the systems that we want to use going forward.
There's a lot of cool things going on between all these CubeSats that make up our secondary payloads. Additionally, inside the Orion, we'll be flying an experiment to study space biology.
Space biology is where we study the underlying changes that Earth-based biological systems undergo when they're in space.
Or basically, how does life respond to the space environment?
The level of ionizing radiation that you experience when you go beyond the Van Allen belt, so you go beyond the protective magnetic sphere that we have around us, you then get exposed to higher levels of ionizing radiation. So we are flying several space biology experiments.
We will take a series of materials,
plant seeds, fungi, the yeast cell, algae,
and ride along the trip. And then when it comes home, we can analyze how they responded to that environment.
This research will help us thrive in space. It will help us to go further and stay there longer.
In addition to space biology, we'll be learning about how to make astronauts more effective in the Orion in the future. An example of that is something called the Callisto Technology Demonstration.
Lockheed Martin built the Orion spacecraft for NASA, and we'll be flying a secondary payload that's a demonstration payload called Callisto. So we took the technology from Amazon for Alexa and the WebEx technology from Cisco, and so we built a digital assistant, if you will, the custom space-qualified Alexa.
Alexa, how does the life support system work?
Orion's life support system is the environmental control and life support system oracles.
And so this payload is the demonstration mission to show how astronauts in the future could use this technology as an innovative user interface.
So there you have it. I hope you agree with me. This is exciting.
I am just over the moon excited for the Artemis 1 launch.
The science we'll conduct on Artemis 1 lays the groundwork to ensure that we can safely conduct scientific activities at the moon with our astronauts going forward. This really is the stepping stone for us as we take that next giant leap in space exploration.
So a lot of great science also happening on the International Space Station. I got to speak with astronauts Jessica Watkins and Samantha Cristoforetti while they were still on board about the research there that will benefit future Artemis missions. Jessica, Samantha, your primary job on the space station is to maintain the orbiting lab and conduct science experiments, more than 200 before Crew 4 returns home. Jessica, can you tell me about one of the experiments that will help return us to the moon with the Artemis program?
We do a lot of experiments where we are looking into developing new technologies that will enable us to go further into the solar system. And one of those technologies was the AstroRad experiment. Radiation is one of the challenges that we face when we think about going further into the solar system. And so this vest is an option for providing the crew member with protection. And then one of the mannequins on Artemis 1, launching here later this month, will also be wearing the vest. We'll get a sense for its effectiveness on board as well.
Samantha, I know that you've been doing a lot of work to test how we would grow crops in space. What crops are you growing on Space Station right now, and what's unique about them?
Indeed. Actually, right next to us as we are talking to you, we have a little space station vegetable garden. It's called X-Root, and in a few weeks it will be full of fully grown, hopefully tomatoes and carrot plants. I don't have much of a green thumb, I must confess, but when I harvested those plants and I could really breathe in all that smell, even if there is no soil, it still has that smell that you would associate on the ground with walking, through a vegetable garden after a rainy day, when there is that moisture in the air, and that was just so pleasant after such a long time living away from any kind of natural environment. It was very, very pleasant for me.
If it makes you feel any better, I also do not have a green thumb. So what about water? How are you testing critical life support systems like water to hopefully help us stay off Earth longer than we ever have before?
Sure, yes. So we kind of use the tagline that yesterday's coffee becomes today's coffee. So there's a process by which we can filter our urine, and so we are at the point now where we are able to recycle about 96% of the essentially of our water on board, and are continuing to test new technologies to get even closer to the 98% utilization rate that we'll need for the moon in particular.
Samantha, what are you most excited about for Artemis 1?
Seeing that gigantic rocket take off, and I think it will be just a sign of all those great things to come.
Jessica, you could one day walk on the moon as part of the Artemis program. How does that make you feel?
The idea of being able to explore the surface of another planetary body, especially for me as a geologist and a planetary geologist specifically, is just super exciting. All of the science that we're going to be able to conduct from the surface of the moon.
Jessica, Samantha, thank you so much. And before you go, I'd love to see a flip. You laugh, I love it. And a double backflip at that. Now, Kayla, you of course lived and worked on the International Space Station as part of Crew 3. Do you enjoy, or did you enjoy doing all those science experiments while you were there? It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, it's incredible to be a part of every single experiment. It's an honor to play a small role in it. We got to do some really cool tech demonstrations while we were up there too. So for me as an engineer, that was really fun. That's a photo of me doing the first scanning electron microscope samples on the International Space Station. And it was cool for me because I worked with a scanning electron microscope in my graduate school research that took up it was as big as this desk.
Oh.
But seeing a miniaturized version of those that we have up there and imagining how we could use it in a lunar or Martian laboratory to better analyze samples and decide what to bring home was really exciting.
Yeah, and you touched on this earlier before, but I do think it's just so important to note again that you're doing science for scientists who've been working on their studies for decades, some of them. So to fulfill that, how does that make you feel?
It's incredible. We're almost like their laboratory technicians for that little moment in time, but they've been working their entire life, sometimes decades, years, to get that science payload up there. And it's a really unique laboratory environment. The microgravity environment, the space environment, the radiation environment, like you heard talked about in those videos, provides an opportunity to do science that we just can't do here on Earth.
Yeah, and to think that what we do on the International Space Station can fuel future Artemis missions, I think the fact that they go hand in hand is really cool. All right, so let's take some more social media questions. Social media is buzzing right now since we launched about 48 minutes ago. So why don't we take the first question, I think again from let's see, Kayla, how do you feel after launch?
Super inspired. I mean, we talked about it earlier with the Red Crew and in the moments just after launch, but this is really the culmination of a giant team effort. It takes every single member of our team to pull off a successful launch. It's incredibly complicated, incredibly challenging, and in some cases kind of dangerous for a Red Crew team who went inside the blast danger area to make a fix that was critical to today's launch. And so to see the team succeed and feel that excitement was incredible.
I really still have Charlie Blackwell Thompson's words ringing in my head. The fact that she said the harder the climb, the better the view.
Absolutely.
100% correct. All right, next question is from actor Jack Black. He starred in a movie called Apollo 10.5. He has a question for Kayla.
Okay, Jack's final question, I promise. Let's talk about Orion. How long will it take for Orion to fly around the moon and come home? And what's that re-entry going to be like? Sounds like it might be a little hot. Coming in hot.
You're exactly right, Jack. It is a 26-day mission that we have planned for Artemis, where it will go to the moon, go into a distant retrograde orbit, so we'll get a few close flybys and then some time in deep space past the moon. And then, that re-entry is going to be something else. It's going to be 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, super hot. And so we'll be looking at how the heat shield performs just to ensure that it'll be able to protect the crew for that speed and temperature.
That's half as hot as the sun.
Yes, it's incredibly hot, so we rely on that heat shield to keep our systems and our crew safe, but we expect that it'll perform well, but we're excited to see how it does in about 26 days.
Okay. One last question from social media. What qualifications are required to become an astronaut?
You have to study STEM. You have to have a master's degree or higher in a STEM field. But besides that, we're looking for people who are awesome team players. So there's a lot of different roads to become an astronaut.
We seem to be getting a lot of questions about how people themselves can become astronauts. I think that's really cool that we might see and inspire, again, people who might think about becoming astronauts.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kayla. And thank you for those who sent in those questions. We are about 50 minutes after the launch of Artemis 1. And we are approaching the next critical milestone. That's perigee raise maneuver. So let's head back over to Leah in Mission Control.
The rocket, but the ALS will check. Make sure there's no holds coming from the ground up until T-minus 2 seconds.
Let's go for ALS.
atmospheric force on the rocket. SLS now traveling 607 miles per hour. You're looking at 8.8 million pounds of maximum thrust. Quiet here in the loops of mission control. 4 core stage engines are throttling down ahead of passing through max Q.
There's a star waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He's told us not to blow it, 'cause he knows it's all worthwhile. He told me, let the children lose it. Let the children use it. Let all the children boogie. Didn't know what time it was, the lights were low. I leaned back on my radio. Some cat was laying down some rock and roll out of soul, he said. And the loud sound that seemed to fade came back like a slow voice on a wave for fade. That was no DJ, that was hazy cosmic jive. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He's told us not to blow it, 'cause he knows it's all worthwhile. He told me, let the children lose it. Let the children use it. Let all the children boogie. I had to phone someone, so I picked on you. Hey, that's my round, so you heard him too. Switch on the TV, we may pick him up on channel 2. Look out your window, I can see his light. If we can sparkle, he may land tonight. Don't tell your papa, or he'll get us locked up in fright. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He's told us not to blow it, 'cause he knows it's all worthwhile. He told me, let the children lose it. Let the children use it. Let all the children boogie. It's a god-awful small affair to to the girl with the mousy hair. But her mummy is yelling no, and her daddy has told her to go. But her friend is nowhere to be seen. Now she walks through her sunken dream to the seat with the clearest view, and she's hooked to the silver screen. But the film is a sad thing for she's lived it 10 times or more. She could spit in the eyes of fools as they ask her to focus on sailors fighting in the dance hall. Oh man, look at those cavemen go. It's the freakiest show. Take a look at the long man beating up the wrong guy. Oh man, wonder if you'll ever know who's in the best-selling show. Is there life on Mars? It's on America's tortured brow that Mickey Mouse has grown up a cow. And now the workers have struck for fame, 'cause Lennon's on sale again. See the mice in their million hordes, from Ibiza to the Norfolk Broads. Rule Britannia is out of bounds, to my mother, my dog and clowns. But the film is a sad thing for, 'cause I wrote it 10 times or more. It's about to be writ again, as I ask you to focus on sailors fighting in the dance.
Came out of the NASA space program.
That's right.
Absolutely. In addition to those innovative new technologies and the economic impact, I think for me, seeing this launch today, it's so palpable, just that human desire to explore. What do you think about what we're doing to inspire the Artemis and the generations to follow us?
Well, I think all you have to do is walk into a classroom of kids and look how their eyes get big when you start talking about space. And that is going to multiply itself manyfold as we go back to the moon and then on to Mars. It's also going to bring about a new generation of engineers and mathematicians and technologists and scientists, and all the benefits of that additional activity and education coming out of the Artemis generation. Look what that's going to do for our country and our economy, as well as for our international partners. And it's a great day.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Administrator, thank you so much for joining us for this momentous occasion. As you said, this is the beginning of a new age in space exploration. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
And Kayla, that's going to do it for us here at the host desk. Launch was just the first step in a nearly 26-day mission. Our colleagues in Houston will now continue the broadcast to bring you the next big milestone to the moon. From Kayla and me, have a great day, and go Artemis 1.
Go Artemis.
And we had a great ride to orbit today. We are now 1 hour and 2 minutes since we launched the Artemis 1 mission. Orion is traveling with the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, now almost 15,000 miles per hour. We recently saw the perigee raise maneuver. That's where we lifted the lowest point of Orion's orbit around the Earth, and it puts us in the perfect position to prepare us for translunar injection burn coming up in about 25 minutes. So again, we are looking forward to that translunar injection burn. That's what it's going to commit us to our journey to the moon. And to tell us a little bit more about the translunar injection burn, we've got Dan Hewitt standing by to show us on the moon board how it's all going to go down.
Hey, thanks, Leah. Everybody, welcome back to the moon board. So translunar injection, this is the big one. Just a refresher, we're going to be using this, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. This is what's taken over for all of our in-space propulsion maneuvers after that core stage and those boosters have since dropped away. Modified upper stage from the Delta IV family of rockets from United Launch Alliance, hydrogen, oxygen, fueling the RL-10B-2 engine produces about 24,000 pounds of thrust in a vacuum. Now, the translunar injection is what's going to give us the energy to go from low Earth orbit all the way out here. Now, what does that mean? Here comes a really overly simplified orbital mechanics lesson. Let's say you're in orbit around a planet, say Earth, and you're in a nice circular orbit, but you want to have that orbit be even higher. Well, what you can do is fire your engine behind you, increase your speed, and that then increases the corresponding apogee, or the highest point of your orbit, on the other side, and that's how you raise it up. Well, if you wanted to make it into a nice circle, you could follow up and do another burn right here, and that would raise your perigee, or your lowest point, and then you're in a circular orbit around Earth. That's essentially called a Hohmann transfer. If you've ever followed our missions to the space station, that's what we're doing to kind of gradually raise our orbit until we get to the space station. But for this, we're talking about a lot more energy to get somewhere a lot farther away. So what we're essentially doing is we're going to be in this circular orbit around planet Earth, and we are going to be firing that engine with 24,000 pounds of thrust for about 18 minutes. And what that does is it doesn't just increase your apogee by a little, it increases it all the way out, and it's timed. So by the time Orion is hitting its apogee, the highest point of that orbit, the moon will have moved into position that you're entering into its sphere of influence. You're entering into that area where the lunar gravity is going to be able to capture you. And so that's why we're firing the engine for that long. We need to have that much thrust, that much time to get the energy to go out there. So that's the rough orbital mechanics of what we're doing. Now, after that TLI burn is done, the ICPS is going to separate. Its job largely done in the Artemis 1 mission. As we heard, it's got some secondary payloads up in this stage adapter here that it's going to deploy on its way out. The ICPS will have one more burn after TLI called the disposal burn. And what that's going to do is put it on a trajectory almost looking parallel to that of Orion, where it's going to go around the moon, slingshot away, and then go into what's called a heliocentric orbit. It's actually going to go into orbit around the sun, just like Earth. It's going to leave the Earth-Moon system completely. And then after that, all of the propulsion duties get handed over to the European Service Module. So it'll be using its engines. It's going to do the outbound trajectory correction burn, at least the first one on flight day 1, and a couple more until we get out to the moon and get ready to head into distant retrograde orbit. So that's TLI. It's coming up next. It's going to be a really big moment to pay attention to. So we'll send it back over to Leah to walk us through the ops. Leah?
Thanks, Dan. We are 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 30 seconds into the flight of Artemis 1, now traveling over 15,200 miles per hour. Again, we've recently had the perigee raise maneuver, and in less than 20 minutes now, we'll be looking for the translunar injection burn that Dan just showcased that's going to send us to the moon. But our mission started off with an epic show from the Space Launch System. Again, the Space Launch System is what carried us into orbit today, launching off at 1:47 a.m. Eastern Time. And we've got a couple of special guests from Marshall Space Flight Center. We have Bruce Tiller, the Solid Rocket Booster Manager, and Johnny Heflin, the RS-25 Engine Manager, to tell us more about the maiden voyage of the rocket. Now, they both got to watch it live at Kennedy Space Center. So a big hi to you, Bruce and Johnny. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yes, pleasure to be here.
And can you tell me a little bit about SLS performance today? Did it perform as you expected?
Go ahead, Bruce.
You want me to start?
Go ahead.
Sure. So I managed the booster part of the rocket, and the boosters were fantastic. They performed just as we expected. We got to see some of the data. Obviously, the team hadn't plotted it all, but the pressures looked great. You know, it burned for just the right amount of time, and it separated great. We could see that as well. So very pleased. We were confident it would work well, and it did. Very happy.
Similar story for RS-25. Nominal, what we call nominal performance. The engines performed exactly as predicted based on the quick look data. Like the booster, we've got a lot of data to look at, but so far the data looks really, really good. These historic RS-25s that have 25 flights between them on coming off the shuttle program. So really looking forward to getting a look at the data. It looks really good so far.
That's fantastic, and we agree. It was amazing to monitor here, and the loops were very quiet in Mission Control Houston. That was a good sign. You knew that things were going well. So we know that the launch abort system was inactive for this mission, but it will be active for when we have crew on board for Artemis 2. Are there any other differences we can expect to see in the rocket for Artemis 2?
So for the boosters, by and large, no. If I talk about the boosters from top to bottom, we are going to make one change, though, because of the crew is on it. We're going to have a delay timer in there so that if for some reason they need to abort, we have a few seconds there before, after they abort, before the termination system destroys the rocket. So we will add that, but other than that, nope, these boosters will be the same. Second flight is the first.
Same story for RS-25. It will be the next set of 4 heritage engines from the shuttle program. Configuration-wise, they'll be the same as what we flew today.
Then I'm glad it all went so well. And so after you get that data back from today, what's next for your team?
Well, for my team, we've still got a ton of work to do. We're not only, we're working on at least 3 flight sets at the same time, and so we've got 2 and 3 and 4 to work on. We also are working on a new booster that's a composite case design that will replace this steel case version that we're flying today. So we're excited about that, and there's a lot of work going on there as well. So we've got a lot to do, and we'll just keep doing it.
So RS-25, super busy as well. We have the Artemis 2 engines have already been delivered to MAF, and they're on schedule to be installed in the Artemis 2 core stage in mid-January. We're also about to start the certification test series for the new RS-25 engines that we're building. We have heritage engines for the first 4 flights. Beyond that, coming in on Artemis 5, we will fly what we call the RS-25 restart engines that have been redesigned to reduce cost and reestablish manufacturing for future flights. So we're really excited to get into that certification test series really soon as well.
All right, well, thank you both so much again for joining us. I'm glad that you got to watch the launch, and a major congratulations to you and your teams for all of the effort that you've poured into this. Go Artemis.
Great day.
Great day.
Thank
Fantastic.
you so much.
All right, and we are now 1 hour and 12 minutes into the flight of Artemis 1. We are traveling at orbital velocity. Again, Orion is currently attached to the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, which recently performed the perigee raise maneuver. And we are standing by for translunar injection burn, now less than 15 minutes away. It's going to be about an 18-minute burn that will commit us to the moon. Part of the Artemis program's goal is to inspire the next generation of dreamers and explorers. So we want to show you what students are doing right now to bring the Artemis missions to life.
NASA's Artemis mission will land the first woman and the first person of color on the moon.
And today's students are the Artemis generation.
If you're a student, you can design and build technologies that support the Artemis mission. with NASA's Artemis Student Challenges.
No matter your background or experience,
you're invited to choose a challenge that interests you, whether it's
rockets,
robots,
tools,
software, vehicles,
or other technologies, there's an exciting challenge for you.
So find a mentor and build a team of students.
review the rules and requirements,
and bring
your ideas
to life with NASA's Artemis Student Challenges.
Visit stem.nasa.gov/Artemis and see how you can join one of NASA's mission-related student challenges.
Again, 1 hour and 13 minutes, 30 seconds since liftoff today. We are looking towards translunar injection burn, now about 13 minutes away. That's going to send us to the moon. But did you know that you were invited to fly on the first Artemis mission too? Earlier this year, NASA asked the public to create a pass to virtually board Orion. Anyone who signed up got to include their name on a flash drive. I know my name is on there. And that flash drive is on Orion right now for its journey around the moon. It has more than 3.3 million names. The Orion spacecraft is designed to carry 4 crew members to lunar orbit, which we're preparing for on Artemis 2. NASA astronaut Randy Bresnik brought us through the hatch of the vehicle to show us where those future crew members will live and work during their journey.
This is the Orion crew station, where the crew will be when they fly the vehicle. As you can see, the commander seat's on the left, the pilot seat is on the right. Compared to the space shuttle, which had over 1,200 switches, controls, and circuit breakers, Artemis astronauts will have much less, only about 63. Inside, the crew of 4 can live and work for up to 21 days at a time, which is several days longer than the previous crewed Apollo missions to the moon. The interior is about 30% larger than those Apollo-era capsules to give more crew living and working space. Everything crew needs is packed right under the floor, thanks to the Orion stowage system. Under these panels is space for everything ranging from food, clothing, sleeping bags, to science and camera equipment, and even the tools necessary to perform repairs if required. On the upper part of the crew compartment, or what we call the overhead, is the docking compartment, a crucial component to future exploration. It allows crews to dock the Orion capsule to Gateway, NASA's next generation lunar outpost. Once they dock, crews will have the ability to board the lunar landers also attached to the Gateway and then head down to the surface of the moon. Through these windows, the 4 crew members will have amazing front row seats on their journey to and from the moon. Do you remember Apollo 8 and Bill Anders' famous photo of Earthrise as they came around the moon and saw it for the first time? Imagine being one of those first crew members on Orion, having their own modern-day Earthrise, and knowing they are traveling farther from Earth than humans have ever traveled before. Thanks to thousands of people from across the country and around the world who have helped with the research, design, construction, testing, and more testing. My fellow astronauts and I know that whoever gets selected for future Artemis missions, they're going to have the journey of a lifetime on board the spectacular vehicle we call Orion.
We're now coming up on 10 minutes until the translunar injection burn. Again, Orion is still attached to the interim cryogenic propulsion stage. That RL-10 engine is what's going to perform the burn for us. But to hear more about Orion, I'm going to send it back to Dan at the moon board to tell us all about our spacecraft.
Hey, thanks, Leah. Welcome back to the moon board and Orion. So it's still attached to ICPS, still flying on the very upper part of SLS, but pretty soon it's going to be flying free. And after that happens, it's going to take over all of the propulsion, all of the flying, everything for the rest of the mission. And so to talk a little bit more about propulsion, let's focus in on this, the European Service Module. So this is what's going to be doing all of our maneuvers after we're done with ICPS and that translunar injection burn. And it's going to be doing that with a mix of 3 different types of engines. First one here on the bottom is the Large Orbital Maneuvering System engine. This one produces about 6,000 pounds of thrust. That's going to be doing a lot of your really major pushing maneuvers when we get into the powered flybys, the insertion into distant retrograde orbit, the burns to start sending us back home. that's the one that's really applying the most force. It can also gimbal, which essentially means it can swivel around, and that can help your steering. It's helped out by these 8 auxiliary thrusters. They're in pairs. Those are a little bit smaller. Each one of those produces about 105 pounds of thrust each, but they add some additional push to that orbital maneuvering system engine. And then we also have 24 reaction control system thrusters, these smaller ones that you can see all around Orion. Those are used for a lot of attitude control, so again, which they can help which way you're pointing, but also small translational maneuvers, so moving side to side, up, down, those can be called into play. Now, all of those engines share a common fuel source. They're using what are called hypergolic fuels, a mix of a fuel and an oxidizer, in this case monomethylhydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide. Now, those are long names, and they're hypergolic fuels. What does that mean? A hypergolic fuel essentially means you take your fuel and your oxidizer, you put them together, you get a reaction. You get an exothermic reaction, which creates that thrust, which comes out. You don't need an ignition source like we have on SLS, which is using